Hey Ankit, welcome to our podcast,
Yeah,
London, New York Podcast. Glad to have you with us today.
thank you.
So, Ankit, before we get started, I know you personally from last couple of years, but for our audience, like if you can give a quick introduction about yourself, that would be awesome.
Yeah, sure. My name is Ankit. I live in New York City. I work as a data scientist at Google. I have been living in the city for almost 6, 7 years now. I moved to New York in 2018, so kind of 7 years. Yeah.
Perfect. That's awesome, Ankit. So welcome again. So again, as I told you earlier, the format of the podcast is very casual and relaxed. So I'll basically try and understand about your journey a bit more for our audience. Our target audience basically is people who are back in India and trying to make their way into tech world or trying to make their ways into Western countries, either for education, for their masters, or looking for jobs and stuff like that. So we'll
Okay.
try and understand your journey, right? Which
Yeah,
is like
sure.
how your journey has been. So, like
Mhm.
to start with, I was really curious to understand like how you landed into data science, right?
Yeah,
Which
sure.
is like was that like you knew about the field, or is that someone guided you, or how it happened?
Yeah. So I'll give you like a slightly long answer for this. The
Sure,
way I end up in data science, like before, just after my engineering back in India, I did my engineering from Bhopal, and after my engineering, I got a job at Equifax, where I worked for Equifax is like a credit bureau, but they had their analytics division back in India. So I got a job in the analytics division, and I worked there for almost 2 years. And then I moved to HSBC, again analytics team. So I was doing a lot of campaign analysis. So not exactly data science, where I was not like building models, but more on the insights part. But nowadays, initially people used to say like data science just modeling, but nowadays it seems like data science is more of insights, analytics, and
yeah.
model building and AI. Everything comes under the umbrella of data science. So since I worked there in India for 4 years in the data science industry, and I did my master's in business analytics, that too like more focused on data science. So I was looking for a job in data science, and then I got my first job after my master's in CVS as a data scientist.
Right.
There I worked there, and then I got into Google as a data scientist.
Got it. So like net your entire journey after like engineering
Yep.
majorly has been into data and data related fields.
Yes.
So it kind of organically happened for you, and then you
Yep.
kind of chose to kind of pursue more deeper into data science with your masters here in the US.
Yes.
That's great to know. That's great to know, Ankit. Thanks for sharing that. So, like, one thing I was always curious to also understand, which is you mentioned about your master's from US, and you went to Columbia, right? So,
Yes.
Columbia University, like, one of the most prestigious universities based in the US, and it's Ivy League, right? So, how it like how Columbia happened, right? Which is like back in India when you were like thinking about going for masters, like, was Columbia your target school, or like how it happened? Just curious to know about that.
Yeah. So, like, really interesting story, like before 2016, I never knew like Columbia exists, to be very
Yeah,
honest. Like,
yeah,
I heard about Ivy League colleges. I knew
yeah,
like Harvard is one of the Ivy League, but that's
yeah,
all I knew.
yeah.
So in 2016, as I told, like I joined HSBC, where I
Mhm.
met like bunch of people who were going to for their masters in during that year. So I spoke to a lot of them. Then I knew like, okay, so there is a college called Columbia, and there's like a lot of good colleges in East Coast. They provide masters in business analytics. So there I met someone who basically I came to Columbia in 2018. There I met someone who came to Columbia in 2017. So I
Mhm.
met this guy. He was about to go to Colombia around 2016, end of 2016. So I met him. So he informed me, okay, this is a really good college, and number one question in my mind was like, what all we need to go into really good college.
Mhm.
Uh, So that was my first question, and he informed me, he gave me, basically, he was very helpful. He told me the whole process, like on an average, how much marks you need in GRE, what kind of SOP you need to go into the good colleges, what would be the tuition fees, because like those were like three
Yeah.
major questions came into my mind that time, and he really helped me with those things.
Hmm.
And then finally, yeah, like I just basically followed the instructions, whatever he said to me that time.
Yeah.
And then I did my own research about the programs, like because like, even in Colombia, there are like two programs. There are a lot of programs nowadays started after 2018, which
Sure.
like deals with data science. But at that time, this was the program which was starting. So I end up choosing this business analytics program, and that's how I've been to Colombia.
Got it. Interesting story.
Mm.
Very interesting
Yeah.
story. So I think that probably happens for a lot of people like us who coming from India, which is like somewhere there was that one person who guided us or
Yeah.
helped us, and that guidance really helped us in kind of getting to that next step in our journey. So like and like again coming going back to Colombia, which is like you mentioned somewhere, which is like till 2016 you did not even know about Colombia, and then it so happened. So one thing more I wanted to understand, which is like probably might be very good for a lot of our viewers, is when you were thinking about doing a master's in data related field, right? So apart from Columbia, what other universities you were looking at? And I think that probably you might have some criteria, right?
Yes.
What different type of data courses how much
Yeah.
rigorous they are, like what's the tuition fee and what
Yeah.
the job prospects and stuff like that. So like what were your top two or three or four colleges that you were looking for at that point in time from India?
So at that time, like when I started my preparation and when I started researching about the master's program and going to the US, I like read bunch of article. So during that time, I saw one of the article which says that, like whenever you're planning to apply for the colleges, apply for like three top colleges, basically, which are in the ambitious category.
Yeah,
Then apply for some of the safe colleges, which basically based on on your scores and SOPs and LOAs
yeah,
that you will get into, and then apply for some medium colleges, which is basically where you want to be. So that's the path I followed, and then as I realized, okay, I want to do my master's in business analytics and in data science. So I the number one thing which I like everyone I think right now will even right now will do is like go on Google and just like try top 10 master's program in in
yeah,
USA. So I did that same research, and then I came to know about, okay, like basically at that time there are like multiple universities started providing really good master's program in data science and business analytics.
yeah.
So I applied to a bunch of them. So I made my list based on the top 10 program list and based on my scores and my experience. I realized, okay, there are like these colleges where I will definitely get into, because I knew like people with similar profile have got the admission in those colleges.
Got it, got it.
So some of the colleges where I applied to, there was like University of Texas at Dallas, which
Hmm.
I think which I realized, okay, I'll get into this college. They had like a lot of Indians studying at
Yeah,
during that time, and
yeah,
that they provide like really good scholarships.
yeah.
So I was like, I kept University of Texas at Dallas as my backup option. If I do
Mhm.
not get anything, I'll get a scholarship.
Yeah.
I'll get into UTD.
Hmm.
But I meet like bunch of people, as I told, in HSBC, where they were going to Columbia. So Columbia was one of the college which came into my dictionary at that time, because okay,
Yeah.
this is a college I can apply to.
Yeah.
Then I applied to like MIT as well, where
Hmm.
I didn't get into. And there was like one college, it's like University of Washington.
Hmm.
It was a really good college. I applied to that college as well, and University of Southern California. So yeah, I basically applied to bunch of the colleges around six and seven, and I was end up getting admits from like I think five or six of them.
Yeah.
There was only one or two out of all the list which I made. I feel like I made pretty like a safe list based on my profile, so that's the reason my conversion was bit high. But
Yeah.
at that time when I was talking to like a lot of people didn't get into many of the colleges where they applied to.
Sure, sure.
So yeah.
And This is really interesting. I think this is probably a very as you were saying, this is a very traditional way that a lot of people like us coming from India, which is keeping some couple of safe schools and
Yeah,
keeping some ambitious schools and then some in between and like try and kind of maximize your ROI, which is like probably try and get towards the higher
yeah,
end of your list where
yeah,
you will get some scholarship, not all probably,
yeah,
and but kind of a more reputed university or the course that you are getting into. That's
yeah,
very interesting. And I think Colombia must have been like really interesting and exciting
yes,
experience. So tell us about like because I know that your bachelor's was in India. You did your
yeah.
bachelor's in India and then you came here for master's. So what differences that you saw when or experienced when you were doing your master's from US? And like, is there anything that stayed with you even after Colombia, and how Colombia helped you as a professional and as a person?
Yeah. So, yeah, actually, really good question. I feel like, at Colombia, multiple things happened to me. First of all, as someone living in India and then moving to New York, it's like a bigger city,
Yeah,
moving to Colombia, a bigger school. There was like, it was bit of overwhelming in the starting
yeah,
because like so many things going on. Like you are new in the big city, you don't know, like always like lived in India. I never moved out of India before I came to New York. So it was the first time I was like, I'm moving to New York by myself.
yeah,
So it was bit overwhelming, and Colombia was great. Like the teachers and the professors and students, they're like really helpful.
yeah.
But at the same time, it's really competitive. Like until 2018, I feel like in my life, I was kind of in the top 10, top 15 percentile wherever I've been to, like in my school, during my undergrad, even when I was working with like a bunch of people, I feel like I was pretty good. I was like, I used to feel very confident. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
as soon as I moved to Colombia, I met like bunch of people, and during the first midterm, I realized, okay, that's not the case. Like, it was so competitive. Like, I still remember, like, I gave my first midterm of Colombia, and I was like top bottom 30th percentile of my class because
So
like students were like so smart in our class of like 90 people. There were like 70% people were international or more than that maybe, and there are like very few American students were there, but like everyone was so smart.
it was like the best from everywhere was kind of collected and put into one kind of
Exactly.
section.
So that's what
Everyone probably was very smart in their respective worlds, and
yeah.
now all those smart people are in just one space.
Yeah, so that was the shocker for me. After my first midterm, I still remember I went to my professor. There was like I think I don't remember what they call it, but kind of like a professor whom you consult about like what's going on and if
Yeah,
he can advise you. So I went to our professor and I was like, Professor, this has happened to me, and like I'm really shocked, like
yeah,
because I gave a lot of things to come over here. Like I took an education loan,
yeah,
and this is the marks I'm getting. I'm like so sad about it. So
yeah,
he told me, he gave me some motivation, he gave me some confidence, saying that this it's not you. Like it happens with a lot of students.
yeah,
Columbia is like a really good university, so lot of smart people from all over the world comes over here. So do not feel like sad about it. It's just try to see how you can make the most out of Columbia.
yeah.
So I took his advice, and to be honest, that was really helpful. I feel
Wow.
like I then post my first term, I realized, okay, like I don't wanna be the top 5% of my class. I just want to learn as much as I can,
Yeah.
and then focus on learning, and eventually things will be better. So I followed his instructions, and I feel like yeah, after that things was pretty smooth.
Got it. Got it. That's really interesting. I think that is something that I've heard from a lot of other friends and colleagues who came to the US and did their masters from top tier university, which is this is kind of a syndrome that they basically have, right? Or they feel when they come here, which is everyone is so smart. But before this, I usually used to be the smartest or quickly used to become smartest in the room.
Yeah.
But here, after a lot of effort, also, I'm not even probably in the first 50 percentile of the people around me. But tell me one thing, Ankit, which is like I think it's a common kind of a situation in back in India, which is a lot of the data scientists or people working in data field are kind of never trained academically in that area, which is mostly everyone that I know is like really few people have done like masters in stats or mathematics, and usually it's like very common backgrounds coming from engineering side of the world, which is there is nothing about data there, and then you land into a job and you learn things on the job, on your role itself in the company, and which is I think there's a term called citizen data scientist for
Yeah,
that for breed,
yeah,
right? Which is majorly, I think, if I can call that, majorly we have citizen data scientists in India, right? And
yeah,
you and I probably have been in that space
yeah,
for initial part of our careers. So coming to Colombia and then doing your education, a formal education into data science, how did that change you as a data scientist? Like
yeah,
before Colombia being a citizen data scientist and after Columbia, when you actually have gained like formal education into this
yeah,
field of yours. So how did that change you as a data scientist?
yeah. Yeah, I feel like Colombia has a really good impact because, before Colombia, when I was working in the analytics industry,
Yeah.
you don't know the basics, to be honest. Like, I still remember back in 2015, I was trying to run a t-test
Hmm.
and then just trying to figure out how to read the p-value for a
Yeah.
t-test because I never got that kind of education and I did my engineering in like electrical.
Yeah.
We never read those like stats
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
those A/B testing concepts, so it
Yeah.
was so new to me. And then as like you are trying to do things, what people usually do, they just like Google it.
Yeah.
They just Google enough to
Yeah.
know, okay, how to read the value and then just go ahead with the, because everyone is so busy with the work, right? So you don't have that much time to go into the details about like things and how to read it, how to, if you want to make changes in it. So you don't go into the details about it.
Yeah.
So that's how I was as well. But in those like 4 years, I realized, okay, that's not how I want to be because I feel like I want to grow in this particular field, and if I want to be in this field, I want to know more. Like I want to know more things into the details.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
that's where I feel like Columbia helped me. I like deliberately try to pick those courses which could help me in my journey in my career ahead. So
Yeah.
at Columbia, I make sure that I was picking courses like data analytics, ML, optimization, where like I can get, because somewhere in my mind I also knew that even in the industry people do not like necessarily use the algorithms, like not necessarily write the algorithms. I mean, people like use packages directly. So I wanted to be that person who can understand like what these libraries do and how I can
Yeah.
apply it into the work.
Yeah. What exactly are the workings behind everything that we
Yeah.
do, right? Which is like, as
Yes.
you said earlier, which is that I think that's a very typical citizen data scientist attribute, which is I don't understand p-value. I don't understand t-test. So,
Yeah.
but I can quickly do it after doing a quick Google search, reading couple of papers. I can still understand some part of it,
Yeah.
like enough to just get my work done, right?
Yeah.
But still don't understand those concepts in detail, right? So, I believe like what you mentioned really helped you to understand the workings of these algorithms or these functions that basically are used in data science, and that really help you appreciate
Yeah.
uh, the the ground workings of the data
Yeah.
science field, right?
And also, I feel like there is one thing when you go into the details about any algorithm or any topic, right? Like I feel like you can remember it for longer. So,
Yeah,
like if you're working on something, you just Google it, you know how it works, and then after a few months, when you don't use it, you just forget. But if you just go into the details, then there is a good chance that you can able to retain those things for
yeah,
a longer duration.
for sure. And I think those things, kind of a good, solid foundation is definitely required if you really want to do cutting edge and innovative work,
Yeah,
right? Which is, if I think that is where I feel that being a citizen data scientist is kind of um, curtails your opportunities, which is even if you are given like cutting edge projects or work, it would be very hard to deliver on that. But once you actually have a very solid foundation, technical foundation into
Yep.
these things, it kind of becomes easier for you to work on something completely unknown, right?
Yes.
You really don't, you are probably, I think one thing I at least have seen myself doing, which is I was always initially trying to look for some past references. Hey, I've
Yes.
used this kind of project. Something similar has been done. Try and learn from that.
Yeah.
And if there's completely net new area, there's
Yeah.
nothing much available. It was very hard.
Yes.
Right. Interesting. I think let's switch gears. And I want to really understand, which is like how your journey to Google has been, right? Which
Yeah.
is, we talked about Columbia, we talked about like data science, like how you
Yeah.
got into data science and how you got into Columbia. And from last couple of years, I think congratulations on your second anniversary. You
Yeah.
recently
Thank you.
completed 2 years at Google. So how your journey to Google has been. I think Google is I think we all can agree is still a dream company for every tech professional, right? And like specifically data scientists. So how your journey to Google has been, like when you really thought about like, hey, I want to go towards big tech or Google in specifically, and how was the preparation? Like, give us some details and insight
Yeah.
to that.
So, as I told, right, just after my master's at Columbia, I got a job at CVS.
Yeah,
There I worked for like 2 years, where though CVS is not a tech company, but like my team specific was really good. Like we were doing like a lot of cutting edge work in terms of A/B testing and like deploying the model. So there were like we were using a lot of new tools which I never used earlier.
yeah,
So there I feel like after working for there for like 2.5 years, I realized, okay, like I think I knew enough now, and I started feeling like a confidence in myself that I can apply at least for some tech companies and see how it goes.
yeah,
So I started researching about like what kind of interviews like tech companies have when someone wants to enter as a data scientist, and I realized like there was like like a common trend for pretty much all the companies. Like uh, just like before jumping on that, and there is one more thing, like data scientists right now, it's like a generic term.
yeah,
So there are like some data scientists in tech companies, they are doing like a product data science. Like for example, I am a product data scientist,
yeah.
but there are also like some data scientists who are doing more like applied work where they are like
Research.
building the algorithms and deploying it. So they in Google we do have like applied data science and MLE, but in a lot of companies they are just called as data scientist.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So and that's the research I did. I realized, okay, for example, in Meta, when they say data scientist, it's called product data scientist, and these are the interviews. This is how the interview process looks like at
Yeah.
Meta, at Microsoft, at Google. Uh, at the same time, I researched about Uber. Like Uber data scientist is a bit unique. I realized, okay, it's more on the product, but it's more focused on the algorithm side as well.
Got it.
So, I knew that I feel like I knew somewhere in my mind that I want to go towards the product data science. So there I started my journey. Like I started researching about how the interviews looks like, and then how to prep for those interviews. And as I said, like the path for those interviews pretty okay, because there are like so many people working as a data scientist. I feel like there is like a lot of material available online right now.
Yeah.
So I would not say it's easy, but I feel like if you want to know like what are the things, if people who are trying to go into a tech company are trying to work as a data scientist, I feel like there is a lot of material available online, and that is still valid right now. Like still companies have those processes which is mentioned. So that's what I did. Basically, I first figure out what's the process, like how many interview rounds these companies have,
Yeah.
and then I just like started preparing about it. I realized, okay, SQL is something like companies ask a lot. Python is something companies ask a lot. There is a round called like product analytics where you have to, like solve the product case,
Yeah.
and so yeah, I feel like that was pretty
Yeah.
much
Got
pretty
it.
much it in terms of preparations.
So I think like I understand what you're saying, which is I think it's very similar for a lot of the other roles like software engineering or TPMs
Yeah.
or PMs, which is I think and specifically in data science, one thing, as you mentioned earlier, is uh, a lot of different companies probably would say data scientist, but they probably mean something else. They might mean
Exactly.
MLE, they might mean a research data scientist,
Yeah.
or some company might say a product analyst, and they probably mean a data scientist in product.
Yeah.
So you really need to research specifically with
Yeah.
tech companies to understand like what is the role in this specific company that you are looking for. Like at Google, as you mentioned, which is you are a product data scientist, that is a defined area, which is a data scientist who is working on product side of the world, right? So for anyone who is trying to get into is like one, do your research well, try and understand
Yeah.
what what you want to do and what that role is called in that specific company or companies that you are targeting. And then
Exactly,
I think
because the interview process could be very different
yeah,
based on the type of profile. For example, if I give my specific example, I am a business data scientist at Google.
yeah,
Within Google, like we have three data science ladders, right?
yeah,
So the interview process for each of these data science ladder is slightly different. I feel like
yeah,
for business and for products, slightly similar, but for data science research, the interview
it's very
process is a
different.
bit different.
Got it.
So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
would say like if someone is trying to go for the interviews, like research about it, like what the job title is and like what kind of interviews, and then start preparing for it.
got it. Yeah, 100%. And I think the other good point that you mentioned is that now these like specific data science is such a well-defined area in itself that there's a lot of content available online,
Yeah.
right? When you're preparing for these tech companies, I think probably 80% of your preparation could be done using the content available on
Yes.
YouTube or there's like a lot of different preparation based websites. They have a lot of like cases that came in these companies interviews at some point in someone's interview. So I think apart from that, did you kind of did some mock interviews with your friends or ex-colleagues or people you knew in these tech companies or
Yeah. I knew there are like a lot of websites
yeah,
nowadays where you can go and book a mock interviews with
yeah,
like the actual data scientists working in the tech companies. I knew
yeah,
like a lot of people in Google taking those mock interviews as well. But
yeah,
like I haven't like personally didn't do any of those mock interviews. I feel like the way I practiced it, like I was giving multiple interviews
yeah, 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 yeah.
and based on those interviews, I feel like I knew like where I am lacking, what I have to learn, and then I just like gradually learning from the experience of my interviews,
Got
and that's
it.
how I learned it. Like I do have like a lot of friends who were working in tech at that time. I
Mm,
have like talked to them like what are things needed. They suggested me like for example for coding, everyone use Lead Code. Like that's the best website to do coding practice. So yeah, those things like those tips I took from my friends. But yeah, but nowadays I feel like everyone who is trying to enter into the tech data science, I feel like those websites are really good
yeah.
because it gives you, like for like the experience which you get from those interviews is really great and you can learn a lot and then you can apply those learnings in the final interviews.
For sure, for sure. That is so interesting, and thanks for sharing the
Mhm.
insights on your journey to Google. So, like, I think we'll now wrap up, but
Yeah.
before we go, I really want to understand or like final parting words in terms of how your experience with Google has been over the last 2 years. Uh,
Yeah,
uh,
it's been really great, great people working, including yourself. It's so great working with everyone at Google. I feel like people are really smart here as well. Like just like Colombia, when you meet someone, like there are like so much of ideas people have, and there is always something to learn. Like I feel like in every meeting, you can learn something new. You can, like there is some topic which someone will say, and that's something like you don't know. So you
yeah,
feel like okay, that is something you can learn.
like
So I feel
super
like
smart people.
people are like super smart, and people are really helpful.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, to Google, I feel like before Google, I have worked in like multiple companies, but yeah, there's one thing I observed in Google. We say like googliness. I feel like that's the culture in Google. What people have that everyone at Google has this like googliness in them. So it's really great to work for Google with all the smart people and to learn from them.
And all the free food that we get, right?
Yeah, and yeah, free food and the office premises. I feel like Google has one of the best offices. uh, compared to like all the
Thanks.
companies.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you so much, Ankit. It was really great talking to you and understanding your
Yeah,
journey over last few years. And thanks for sharing all the insights for our audience. So we'll close here, but
yeah,
thank you again so much. Have a great weekend.
yeah. Thank you,
So
Ashish. Thank you for having me.
absolutely, it was our pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good
All
one.
right,
Bye.
bye.